The crowd is buzzing. The match is about to begin. And then Pele pauses, not to strategize, not to pray, but to tie his shoelaces. What seemed like a normal moment during the 1970 World Cup was actually a PR masterstroke. Puma paid Pele $120,000, nearly a million these days, just to tie the laces, and even paid the cameraman to zoom in, betting that the entire world would be watching Pele with his Puma boots. Well, PR in sport is more visible than we might think, so let's see the real game behind the game. Welcome to Off the Record and On the Field podcast. In today's episode, let's find out what sports PR actually is and why does it matter in this industry. We'll look at the impact of press conferences and public statements and how social media has changed the broad picture of sports PR. Here to share the insights are two guests, Sergio Nguyen and Katie Ransom, who will bring diverse perspectives to the table. So whether you are a PR student, a die-hard sport fan, or just curious about what goes on beyond the game, this one is for you. But just before we hear the insights, let's quickly go over what sports PR actually is. Sports PR is essentially about managing the public image and communication for athletes, teams, and organizations. No matter the industry, a good reputation is everything. Communication plays a huge role in shaping a sport team's public image, especially during key moments like big wins, tough losses, or unexpected crises. And that's exactly when press conferences and public statements come into play. So to understand this better, joining me on the podcast today is Sergio Nguyen, who currently works as a partnership manager at Manchester Futsal Club and also a content creator on social media. Hi, Sergio.
Hello. So first of all, very glad for having me here today, and I hope that a bit of my point of views and insight will be valuable for your podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. So first thing first, could you tell us a bit about your background and how your career in sports got started?
So my background, I'm currently in my last year, final year of studying sport business management at Manchester Met Uni, and I've been working in like different roles in social media, in events, and at the moment in partnership team at Manchester Futsal Club.
Seems like you've seen a lot of different angles in the industry. So,
Yeah.
based on your experience, how are press conferences and public statements typically used in football?
Let's say like I would give an example of a football club. Typically, it's like a rituals. Before every game, they're gonna have like a pre-game conference. So the coaches the will have a conversations with like a public press conference with the journalists from different broadcaster, different newspapers.
I mean, press conferences probably aren't just about answering questions. They are indeed a tool for shaping how the public see the team. And speaking of shaping perceptions, I know that is usually the gaffer, the head coach, who speaks during both pre-match and post-match press conferences. So, what do you think is the power of their voice in shaping the team's image?
We just mentioned like it is like an instrument. It's not just only for information providing. It also like a way for coaches to set the expectation for the press. For example, usually let's say there are lots of like tricky questions from journalists. So I think their voice is powerful in a way that it set the right expectation for the public. There are also techniques that coaches they're gonna use to play a bit of mind games, just to a bit like heat the game up, things like that.
Wow, there's clearly a lot more going on behind the scenes than most people think. To be fair, a press conference can really shape the mood of the match and also influence fans. So I'm curious that from your experience, has there ever been a moment when something said or even left unsaid in the press conference that had a big impact on the situation?
Have a big impact on the situation.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't think an example on the top of my head. Let's see. Do you have any ideas that you think that might be a good story, might be a good case that we could discuss?
I've got really recent one. It came from the post-match press conferences yesterday after Tottenham made it to the Europa League final. The coach Postecoglou was asked what he thought about their opponents in the final, which is Man United, and he just calmly replied something like, "Why do I need to care about them?" I can see the calm in his voice, but there was definitely a hint of maybe hidden frustration and the atmosphere really heated up. I think it's hard to tell if he was playing mind games or just being honest against the media. Either way, it was quite a moment. So, because things happen so fast, then if you lose control of the message, it's like losing the ball in the midfield. And
Yeah,
I guess that kind of control becomes even more important now when we're in an area where social media spreads
yeah.
news and even backlash instantly. So some people say press conferences becoming less relevant because
Mm.
teams can now speak directly to fans online. But do you think what unique value do press conferences still bring compared to
Mm.
digital channels?
First of all, I would say that's a very good question because it's very contemporary. Well, despite like the growth of digital channels, social media, I'll still say the uniqueness of press conference. I would say it still remains really important, which is those press conference are the unfiltered moments.
Mhm.
It is quite, which words I should say, it's quite authentic in a way. So
Mhm.
it's like a two-way conversation, the coaches with the journalists.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, the sense of the energy really does give press conferences something digital posts like can't replace. But of course, sometimes teams have to go for, a
Yeah.
public statement instead. So what would you say are the pros and cons of using a statement to deliver important news or
Mm.
respond to an issue?
Let's first talk with the advantage of the public statement. So it gave time for the club to tailor, to polish their response. And second of all, they have a full control of the narrative. Was read, it was prepared by a teams, by a group of people. But on the other side, the disadvantage of a public statement, I would say is it again is a one-way communication. It doesn't give the fans, the public to scrutinize, to ask questions.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot to like weigh up depending on the situation to evaluate it has whether it has more benefits or shortcomings.
Mm,
Well, just before we finish up this part of the conversation, what's something you think teams and athletes often miss when it comes to managing their public voice?
mm. Consistency, I would say. Sometimes the coaches or players say something in public that goes against their values, that goes against the message that the club want to deliver. The consistency in delivering message, whether it's from the club, whether it's from the players, the coaches, even the staff within the club is hugely important.
Yeah, even in PR in general, like consistency is a crucial for building trust, fostering audience engagement, and
Mm,
even creating a recognizable brand image. And
mm.
well, Satchel, thank you very much for joining me today and sharing your insights. It's been really great talking with you.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's turn our attentions to something that's completely reshaped how sport teams communicate with their audiences is social media. So, to help us explore this, I would like to introduce Katie Ransom, a sport content creator. Hi, Katie.
Thank you so much for having me. So, yeah, I'm Katie. I'm a current sports marketing student in Leeds, and as I've been so lovely introduced, a freelance content creator specializing in design and media.
That's great. So, before we get into some of the current trends, I would like to take a quick rewind.
So looking back to when social media first emerged in the sport industry, how would you describe its evolution until now?
So from what I've experienced growing up alongside me, however, is the way social media has, say, revolutionized the interactivity and spread of sport. Before media, it was all about, I'd say, maybe the big three, so football, rugby, and motorsport. But now sports you'd kind of never even dream or heard of are making their way through the woodworks.
I think that's a clear picture of how things have changed. For me, I would say it actually started from being just broadcaster of the news and now like being full-on storytellers and community builders. And with that shift, I imagine like these strategies have had to evolve quite a bit too. So what do you see as the most impactful tactics or strategies that sport teams and individuals are currently using for PR on social media?
Yeah, so as you've referred to them, say like the legacy media methods like the TV and radio, they're so one-sided with kind of that rift between us and them, whereas now it's so much easier for fans to feel connected and invested because let's be honest, I don't know about you, but I'm really nosy and like I want to know what's going on. And we crave the best for ourselves. So now with these new ways to talk and interact, it feels all the more possible. And I'm a proper sucker for like the cause related media, so interacting with the fans who deserve so much yet have often been dealt the worst cards in life. I think everyone loves a feel good story. So I'd say my most impactful strategies are those that give back, with the power and influence of sports teams in our modern day. It's so refreshing and like reassuring to see that there are still pure people in the world.
Off the back of that, have you seen a moment where social media directly, impact public perception?
Yeah, I think, social media nowadays says more about a sport and its people, I feel, than anything else. And at the end of the day, communication and connection, they very much go hand in hand. So with my area of expertise being content creation, specifically photography, there is example after example where images have changed the course of history and how people have viewed a sport and its athletes. As far back as I can remember, you've had photo finishes that so clearly dictate the outcome of a narrative with almost zero margin for argument, and yet people will always have something to say in disagreement. But beyond that, I think images specifically are timeless. I'm going to say it again, but you see so many examples of, moments in sport that people wouldn't know about that have become like true legend if it wasn't for the fact of, social media and content creators.
Yeah, with the social media always shifting, I would say there's a constant need to adapt. And looking to the future, what trends would you think are going to really influence how PR in sport evolves from here?
Social media encompasses now, it's like you need 600 hands and minds to manage them all as the same person, because with each, platform's individual audiences and features, it's super hard to like recycle content with as much reach on one as the other. I think it's no coincidence we see the large majority of like athlete influencers and people like that in that space staying with one platform to develop rather than doing little and often across, say, Instagram and TikTok or Facebook. Otherwise, there's so much stuff going on social media across any platform, and you have to make an impact and make headways to actually get noticed.
All right. Thank you so much, Katie. Some really valuable insight there. And I'm sure that our listeners will take a lot from what you've shared.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. One thing's clear, that PR is right at the heart of sport. Managing public image, being ready for those highest pressure moments, and building authentic connections with fans are absolutely essential for long-term success and reputation. A huge thanks again to our guests today, Sergio and Katie, for sharing their expertise. And thank you for listening. We hope you gain a better understanding of PR in the sports world. I'm Julie, and you've been listening to Off the Record and On the Field podcast.